Day 213. Leadership means showing up even when people don't always appreciate it. Having said that, that's the title of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at the life of Moses. We're going to read from the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verses 10 through 14. Starting in verse 10, Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance to their tents. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all of these people? Did I give them birth? Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms as a nurse carries an infant to the land you promised an oath to their ancestors? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me, 'Give us meat to eat.' I cannot carry all of these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me." So to set the scene here, God had just called Moses from the burning bush. And when he did that, into this, setting the scene here, it wasn't to this glamorous task. It wasn't some glamorous task. It was to lead a group of stubborn and fearful and complaining people through a desert for decades. Like, Moses wasn't getting applause at this time. There were people that weren't trusting in him and complaining to him and questioning him. He wasn't receiving praise. He was getting problems. And you got to think, like, everything that God had done for these people prior to these things they were complaining about. He had gotten them through plagues. He got Moses to part the Red Sea. He brought down manna from heaven. And yet these people were still complaining. They were still doubting God, and they were still questioning Moses' leadership. So I guess the lesson in that first part is that God-sized leadership comes with people-sized problems. God-sized leadership comes with people-sized frustrations. That might be a better way to say that. But given all of that, Moses still showed up. Day after day, and even year after year. Even when people were grumbling, even when they wanted to go back to Egypt, even when they were accusing Moses of trying to kill him, which talks about Numbers chapter 14. These people had forgotten every miracle, and they were questioning Moses and saying, like, "Hey, why did you bring us here to die?" But Moses was still walking forward in the plans that the Lord had for him. The next thing I want to talk about is the concept that, like, leadership is heavy. It can be very heavy and very difficult at times, but it's not lonely. Because in Numbers chapter 11, Moses is literally reaching this breaking point, and he's just talking to God honestly. He says, "This burden is too heavy for me." And instead of rebuking him, what God does is he responds with help. God says, "Gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel. I will take some of the spirit that is in you and put it in them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you." So that's skipping ahead a couple verses, talking about Numbers chapter 11, verses 16 and 17. It says that. And this shows us a truth about God, is he didn't intend for these leaders, these spiritual leaders, to carry burden alone. Like, anytime you're leading and you're working with what you got for the Lord, like, you might be stretched and you might be stressed, but God is going to sustain you. He's going to surround you. He's going to provide. So, speaking to myself, for anyone listening, like, if you're ever in a season where you feel like you're carrying a burden and it's not necessarily seen or understood by others, let Moses' story remind you that even if you're trying to lead and do things for God, or do things in the name of God, you're still going to need help. And it's okay to ask for that help. Definitely encouraged to pray for that. And to use the things that God gives you. But again, when you look at Moses' life, what I think it reminds me of is, like, leadership's not just about showing up, leadership's about showing up. It's not about being perfect. It's about just brick by brick being there daily, to keep showing up even if life's knocking you down, even if the frustrations are mounting. Because Moses made mistakes. Like, he absolutely got frustrated. Talks about in Numbers chapter 20 where he struck a rock when he was supposed to speak to it. And his humanity definitely showed. But so did his faithfulness. Because for 40 years, Moses continued to show up, and he was interceding for his people. Even when they were attacking him, he was leading faithfully. And even when it was costing him personally, he guided a generation that they never came to fully appreciate Moses' leadership and what he had done for him. But that leads us to a very real truth that we need to remember in our lives, which is faithfulness is not always seen by the masses, but it's always honored by God. I think I got to remind myself that like this journey in life and the path that we're on, striving to be like Jesus, it's not always easy. And it can be long, it can be challenging, but it's never wasted. I think I always talk about instant gratification, but that's what we want in this life. The human side of us wants these instant fruits, instant recognition. We want this ease that I always talk about, the path of least resistance. But leadership, especially godly leadership, is about that long, quiet obedience in the same direction. And that's why I love drawing that parallel to like my spiritual journey, as cliche as that sounds, to my physical one, working out, eating well. It's like I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to be far from it, but it's just that step by step, one foot in front of the other in the right direction with some valleys and peaks, but just moving in the direction of pursuing something with all I've got. I think that serves me well in the gym and physically and absolutely spiritually, which is most important. If you look at the book of Hebrews chapter 3, verse 5, it says, "Now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant." So like God saw the journey and God honored Moses' continual showing up. And I just think that he will absolutely do the same for myself and for you in our lives. Just that quiet obedience day after day, year after year. So the questions in closing that we can ask ourselves today is like, where have we been tempted to quit in our life because we felt unappreciated or we felt like there's not growth in the timetable that we want it? The second question, where's God asking us to continue to show up, even if it's like a long or difficult season in our life? Where are we being asked to be persistent? And then lastly is like, where are we trying to carry burdens alone in our life when God's calling us to ask for assistance and help and community? Ask yourself those questions, focus on it in this season of life so we can continue to grow. And that's day 213.